What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about Hades 2, which just very recently, I believe on the 6th, technically had its 1 year in early access milestone, if you will, which is an interesting case because Hades 2 entered early access in a pretty good place, honestly, and while there were certainly some things that needed to be cleaned up, and it obviously wasn't content complete at that time, it nonetheless felt great to play already. And yet, over the past year, across 8 patches, it has in fact improved quite a bit, though probably worth a mention that they are inching closer to the actual release of this game straight away. As it stands right this second, they released the most recent patch, patch 8, back at the end of February, right at the start of March more or less, and they are currently working on another major update, so it would follow that not terribly long after that, the game will probably hit 1.0, so I don't think the end of this year or sometime at the beginning of next year would be out of the question, as even some of their most recent updates mention that they're getting closer to the actual release, which makes sense when you play the game because it honestly feels pretty complete at this point. Which is where I want to start this video. So when I initially covered Hades 2 back when it launched into early access, my general takeaway was that it was fun, but there were parts of it that were clunky, some things I thought could be cleaned up. Obviously it was missing some content, of course, but also that the main character here, I believe her name is pronounced like Melano, I'm not sure. I know they say it in game, but for the life of me I can never remember it. Either way, she plays very differently, has a different set of weapons and obviously powers as opposed to Zagreus, so that can take a little getting used to if you jump straight in from the first one, as obviously that is different, and there are even some progression systems here that are different as well, which can simply on its own take a little bit of getting used to be sure. Now other systems I think were just clunky from the get-go, like how they had you gathering certain resources to make like witch's brews, which gave you little upgrades on your individual runs through the gauntlet of battles, but how you gathered those was you had to unlock these tools, and then you had to like take a specific tool with you to get that resource on the run. And then in one of the patches, they eventually made it to where you didn't have to take a specific tool, but rather you would prioritize one and you'd see more of that resource than the others. And then I believe fairly recently they dropped that altogether and the resources just spawn on the runs, as an example. So little things like that had to be worked out. And even here, it is feeling much better already. I didn't have many complaints on that front. So broadly speaking, outside of the patches that we're about to go over, simply put, they took a game over the course of a year that was already feeling pretty good to play, and then obviously added a layer of polish and experience there that you would expect from a game developer that put out the original Hades, of course. It's no small wonder that it has the refinement it has after taking in all that feedback. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the patches that they've put out over the past year, kind of talking about what some of those covered, and obviously we're not going to go like line by line, but just kind of the gist of everything they've been doing over the past year. Starting with, of course, patch 1. So this patch was, perhaps unsurprisingly, focused primarily on fixing things. So they dropped the game into early access. Patch 1 followed not too long after that, like a week or so maybe, I think. And it had a bunch of fixes associated with it. Some small gameplay tweaks. They changed how sprinting worked, making you faster alongside dashing being more consistent across some of the game's individual arenas. And this is where they made some of the initial changes to the tools and the gathering system I just mentioned, because that was one of the biggest points of feedback pretty much immediately, is that people did not like how that system worked. So there's that. Now, patch 2, on the other hand, took a little bit longer and was still focused on fixes and changes, but it was a little more long-term in its approach because it changed a lot of how like rewards were handed out, the tuning of those things, the frequency of them along certain runs, like how many upgrades or blessings or boons you got as you went, as an example. And this is also where they started making changes to the weapons specifically, like changing some of the individual effects they had on their movesets as you unlocked them and people got to explore them more. And then, of course, all that testing that people were putting into it as part of early access necessitated some changes to how each individual weapon played to make each of them feel a little more viable and useful across the board. Now, patch 3, on the other hand, was a massive amount of changes to the blessing and boons system. So as a roguelike game, as you move through the individual arenas, some of the rewards you get are blessings or boons that affect your abilities, your basic attack, your special attack, or any other attacks or combos you might have, and then those blessings will tack on extra effects, which sort of makes your build for that run. In response to all the feedback they had gotten since putting the game onto early access, this patch just overhauled so many of these. Some of them got cut outright and replaced with others. Some obviously saw just straight up tweaks and stuff. But I'm not even kidding, there was like hundreds of changes to the blessings and stuff in patch 3. It was kind of nonsense, to be honest. Patch 4, on the other hand, was mostly a follow-up to patch 3, which involved further tuning those blessings and boons from patch 3 as well. So just additional changes based on, again, the subsequent feedback they got from patch 3. Patch 5, on the other hand, was the game's first major patch, as they called it, which was funny to me given the nature of the changes previously, but patch 5 is where you actually got to start seeing some new content. In particular, they opened up a new region, specifically Olympus. They also added a new weapon, alongside, of course, naturally, to follow along with that stuff, new story beats to go with it, which included new characters, items, all the little sort of tertiary systems that affect all of those things at the same time with the way the game is set up, alongside simply making further adjustments to systems and how everything else worked on top of that. So patch 5 was, in fact, a major patch. It touched most aspects of the game in some manner, while also expanding the available content. Patch 6, then, was simply a follow-up to patch 5 in the sense that a lot of it, addressed bugs or issues with all of the new stuff that may have arisen, or in some cases just balance changes in addition to the stuff that was added with that patch. So that's largely what patch 6 was, whereas patch 7 was yet another major patch, specifically called Warsong. So Warsong put in the final battle of the game, the sort of end point. It's also where they made that additional change to the gathering tools that I mentioned, where you don't have to prioritize them, you just unlock them and then everything's just available potentially in the runs to make that feel a little better. But this is also the patch where they added in Ares, the god of war, which includes all of his blessing and boons, of course, alongside his addition as a character with everything that entails, like the sort of build-up of the bond you can have with any character, which gives you all of their interactions and stuff, but him being a god here means that he's one of the people giving you boons and blessings, so with his addition came a whole set of those for him that then got adjusted further in patch 8. Naturally, though, with this major patch, patch 7, introducing all of this sort of end goal stuff, it then, of course, came with new enemies to the final area, alongside updates to things like UI and the art, kind of bringing them to a more finalized state, even though most of it looked pretty good to begin with. Which brings us to the final and most current patch, which is patch 8. Unsurprisingly, perhaps, is that patch 8 was addressing feedback and everything added from patch 7, alongside adjustments to all of the new mechanical stuff they added, the new boons, the new blessings, that kind of stuff. So a little smaller patch comparatively, because it was just addressing things and following up on feedback from patch 7's major patch. So all of that together pretty much puts us where we are at today. Hades 2 is pretty much a game that already feels like it could be released into 1.0 basically whenever, and yet it is in fact not done. So according to their in-game roadmap, which you can check out just from the main menu, it looks like they've got at least one more major patch left, which they don't have any details to share about at the moment, and then sometime after that will be the 1.0 release, which is too far off for them to give an official release date. But again, late 2025, early 2026 would be the safe sort of window to guess. So putting all of that together, I would say that 1 year on, Hades 2 is doing quite well, and if anything, I'm excited to see it finally get properly finished, as it's already pretty great, but I am nonetheless looking forward to playing through the final version in full. But for today, that's pretty much going to do it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.